Good morning, everyone. It is Monday, September 21st already. We're almost through September, and it is time for another edition of Mantra Monday. How are you today? So, I had a very cool experience over the weekend, and I wanted to share that with you before we get started. Lining up my drinks here. Drink a lot in the morning, most certainly water. So it is a time of conflict. There is a lot of conflicts and a lot of unharmonious human interactions that are going on at this time, to say the least. And good morning, Deanna. Good morning. And so a friend came over to help me install or finish setting up my turntable, my vinyl, because I love vinyl. So that was all wonderful. And then after we did that, we decided to take a walk down to the beach because I live within a 20-minute walking distance to the ocean, it being a rather warm day. And when we got to the beach, you know, you always get to the beach and you kind of look around and you try and stake out a spot, you know, where to settle in. And closer to the water, I noticed that there was, you know, a towel and a couple of boogie boards, but it was like abandoned. It seemed like it was abandoned. Nobody was there. And as considering all the spaces, I thought, you know what, this seems like a good space. So internally, you know, I felt safe there. For some reason, I felt a sense of safety there. So we plopped ourselves down, you know, not right in front, but, you know, probably a couple of feet away from that. Because I figured that way, you know, I could monitor when these people were returning, if they were returning at all. A lot of times people abandon their stuff on the beach. So what ended up happening was all of a sudden, you know, sort of, at least in my mind, all of a sudden, this lady, you know, kind of appeared and wearing a nice hat, wearing a nice bathing suit, and a child came running up with a boogie board. And then I noticed another child, actually a young girl, with a boogie board and a wetsuit on. And, you know, pretty soon it became apparent that this particular area where, you know, was being used by all these children, you know. At first I didn't quite understand the relationship between this lady and the kids. Understandable. These are complete strangers. I don't know them. So it dawned on me that, gee, maybe we were a little bit too close for comfort, because the locals here, by and large, do practice social distancing, even when on the beach. And so I kind of got up and I looked at her and I said, are we bothering you, or, you know, are we too close to you? And she said, yeah, I did think it was a bit odd, you know, that you sat so close to over here. As you can, I've got all these kids coming back and forth, which I didn't realize. So my point is, you know, obviously she was feeling very protective. That's normal. And she also, on her side, you know, was making this assumption that I knew that she had half a dozen children that she was looking after, which of course I had no idea, because when we arrived, there was literally nobody there, and it seems like there was nobody in sight. So my false ego wanted to, you know, take offense, right? There's really no reason to take offense, but, you know, my false ego was sort of indignant, feeling like, well, how was I supposed to know? And you know, you weren't here, and you're not even, you know, blah blah blah. You know, you're not even wearing a mask yourself, and all this, you know, all this nonsense that runs through the mind. So, but for some reason, and I do believe it's also because I was near the water, and the water is definitely a conductor and can be a conductor of healing energy and good vibes. At least that's the way I feel when I'm near the ocean. And so there was sort of there was another feeling that came in, and that was walk in grace. So just this feeling of peace and calm and a kind of a peaceful or harmonious detachment came over me, where I was able to feel, you know, what this woman's feeling was. And I was just able to be peaceful. And so we moved, you know, an appropriate distance away. And instead of engaging in a conflict with this woman, in a verbal conflict with this lady, I just was able to breathe it out and just let it go and just appreciate her situation and just wish her well. Hey, Manuel! Woohoo! Manuel Valverde is here this morning. Hola! Nice to have you here. I was wondering how you've been, because normally you're always here making comments and giving hearts and offering support. So I hope that you're well, my friend, and I hope that your family is well. Ah, from Costa Rica. Yeah, so it must be nighttime for you over there, right? I think 3 hours, well, maybe 3 hours ahead, maybe 4 hours ahead. I want to say that you're on Miami time. Not quite sure, but that's what I'm thinking. Thank you for being here this morning. So I was just telling a story about choosing to not engage in conflict. So anyway, this was just my feeling, and then we had a nice time, 4 hours. We had a nice time. And, you know, as I left the beach, I just said to the woman, "It was nice to meet you," and just kind of smiled. And she just smiled back, you know, and there was just this peaceful feeling that was exchanged between the two of us. Not a need for a lot of words, you know, and just that exchange of that harmonious feeling of being at the ocean and that peace that it engenders. So I was thinking about that just in regards to the endless conflict that seems to be going on right now in the world. So much violence and so much judgment. And I wanted to just offer that story because maybe it will help you. So maybe the next time, you know, you find yourself in a situation where things could easily go sideways, you'll find that you'll be able to take a step back and just see that person, just see them and see their situation and have an appreciation for their feelings, just their feelings, because all this happened at a feeling level, you know. It wasn't, as soon as I let go of, you know, my intellectual processing and my mind and, you know, the meaning I wanted to twist out of this whole thing, my feeling and that other kind of empathy or sympathy, or camaraderie, or whatever you want to call it, was able to step in and take over, and I was able to feel the situation and then operate, you know, on that platform the way we can do, you know, with family members, for example, when we feel how they are feeling. So that's my walk in grace anecdote for this morning. You're welcome, Manuel. I appreciate you, and it's nice to have you here this morning. So, that being said, it is Mantra Monday, and we are already up to text 31 in the chapter, The Opulence of the Absolute. This is the Bhagavad Gita. So, as usual, I will say the verse, sing the verse, translate the verse, read the verse, and then offer the purport, and then if I've got anything constructive to say or any insight, or maybe you do have something to offer, that'd be awesome. I would love that. And that way we can have a more meaningful discussion, which is what we want. I don't want to just be here, you know, just doing things in one way. It makes for a richer experience if we can exchange. And I appreciate you. I really do. Okay, so here we go. Chapter 10, verse 31. Parvana pavatām asmi. Rāmaḥ śastra-bhṛtām aham. jhaṣāṇāṁ makaraś cāsmi. srotasām asmi jāhnavī. I'm going to sing it. Pavanaḥ pavatām asmi. Rāmaḥ śastra-bhṛtām aham. jhaṣāṇāṁ makaraś cāsmi. srotasām asmi jāhnavī. Pavanaḥ pavatām asmi. Rāma śastra-bhṛtām aham. jhaṣāṇāṁ makaraś cāsmi. srotasām asmi jāhnavī. One more time, just because it sounds so good. Pavanaḥ pavatām asmi. Rāmaḥ śastra-bhṛtām aham. jhaṣāṇāṁ makaraś cāsmi. srotasām asmi jāhnavī. All right. So this is the word-for-word translation. Pavanaḥ, the wind. Pavatāм, of all that purifies. Asmi, I am. Rāmaḥ, Ram. śastra-bhṛtām, of the carriers of weapons. Aham, I am. jhaṣāṇāṁ, of all fish. Makaraś, the shark. Cha, also. Asmi, I am. Srotasām, of flowing rivers. Asmi, I am. Jāhnavī, the river Ganges. Of purifiers, I am the wind. Of the wielders of the weapons, I am Ram. Of fishes, I am the shark. And of flowing rivers, I am the Ganges. Did I read that right? Let me do that again. Of purifiers, I am the wind. Of the wielders of weapons, I am Ram. Of fishes, I am the shark. And of flowing rivers, I am the Ganges. Purport. Of all the aquatics, the shark is one of the biggest and is certainly the most dangerous to man. Thus the shark represents Kṛṣṇa. And that's the entire purport. Prabhupada doesn't even go into explaining anything about the wind here, or Lord Ramachandra, or of the river Ganges, which is kind of surprising, because the wind is certainly very, very powerful. So it's interesting because in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, in the introduction, Arjuna, Prince Arjuna, because remember this is a conversation between Arjuna and Kṛṣṇa on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, Arjuna says to Kṛṣṇa, "You're asking me to control my mind, but it seems to me that that's nearly impossible because the mind is as powerful as the wind. How can you control the wind?" And then, of course, Kṛṣṇa says, "Yes, you're right, the mind is very powerful, but with suitable discipline and training, one can subdue the mind." So here, in another context, because one thing can have many meanings, Kṛṣṇa is saying, of purifiers I am the wind. So, if you've ever been to a very polluted city, like Los Angeles, for example, which is notorious for its smog, or maybe even in a city that's not quite as overcrowded with smog, when there is a good breeze, we know that the breeze comes in and it just clears out, any residual pollution, smog, smells. It just has this way of refreshing the atmosphere. So we can think of Kṛṣṇa as being a purifying influence in that way. Then in the translation it says, of wielders of weapons I am Rāma. So I have talked about Lord Ramachandra before, particularly around the time of Rāma. Rāma usually happens around the end of April. And so the whole pastime of Ramachandra going to Lanka with Hanuman, and then the burning of Lanka and the release of Sita and the killing of the great Rakshasa Ravana. So you're probably somewhat familiar with this story, or you're at least familiar or have seen images of Hanuman, or maybe you're very fond of Hanuman yourself. But in this connection specifically, talking about wielders of weapons, I am Rāma. Of course, during the battle that ensues between Ravana and his army and Lord Ramachandra and his army of monkeys and other soldiers, this battle goes on for days. You know, of course, these are not ordinary people. These are, of course, God is not an ordinary person, but neither is Ravana an ordinary person. So there is a great description of the, of the battle, and the artistry and the prowess, going back and forth between these two personalities. Ultimately, Ramachandra being victorious and being able to defeat Ravana with his very special bow and hitting at the solar plexus of Ravana. Of course, Ravana then coughs blood and falls down dead, right? But outside of that battle, what came to mind was specifically the Swayamvara ceremony of Sita Devi. So Sita is Lord Ramachandra's consort. She is, in this pastime, the wife of Lord Ramachandra. And as such, she was an extremely qualified princess. So princesses, Kshatriya princesses back in the day, back in Vedic times, were actually allowed to choose their own husbands. Typically, girls were not allowed to make the selection, but this class of lady could do that. So I guess, in other words, if she wanted to marry, well, for whatever reason she wanted to marry for, maybe it was purely for love, she could do that. But often what would happen, because they were Kshatriyas, right, there would be a contest. The prince or the suitors, they would have to prove themselves also in the arena, and a lot of this is just for, I don't know, kind of for show. The Kshatriyas are ruled by the mode of passion, and they tend to be very, very proud, and very they can be very boisterous. And also, they also spend years training in the military arts, from the time that they are young boys, up until the time where they're actually considered to be old enough and qualified to go into battle if it's necessary. And one of the things that was left at the palace of Sita Devi was this bow, this incredible bow. This bow was actually, if I'm not mistaken, was actually given to, was left there by Lord Shiva. And Lord Shiva, of course, is no ordinary personality either. So, in other words, what had to happen in order to win Sita's hand, or at least be considered by Sita to win her hand, but the way it was set up was the suitor would be able to have to not only be able to pick up this bow, which was incredibly heavy, but would have to be able to string this bow. Okay? So this is one of those things where it's already set up that it's going to be pretty much next to impossible for anyone to do it. And for anyone who is able to do it, it is inherently understood that that person is an extremely special personality. So of course there were many attempts to pick up this bow, which was not able to be done until, ta-da, Ramachandra appeared, you know, and not only was he able to pick up the bow and string the bow, he was so powerful himself, it actually snapped. So that's the first thing that came to mind when reading this verse, that of wielders of weapons, I am Ram, or Ramachandra. Okay, and then it says, of fishes, I am the shark. So Prabhupada, you know, makes mention here that of all the aquatics, the shark is one of the biggest and is certainly the most dangerous to man, and the shark represents Kṛṣṇa. So I decided to go ahead and try and look up some information about sharks. Unfortunately for us, human beings are not high on the list of foods for sharks. Also, I mean, sharks in general, they're swimming, you know, deeper, you know, out into the ocean in general. Of course, there's been so much disruption of the climate and the atmosphere that has gone on in the world recently that things are out of balance. So, but I went ahead and I looked. Now, what is this nonsense here? I went ahead and looked up some pretty amazing things. Some things about sharks. There is a website called sharkinfo.com, and it goes into their habitat, their senses, their species, their appearance, their life cycle, their behavior, their physiology, and also their tracking. And so one of the things I learned from Miss Amelia Meyer, who wrote this about the electroreceptors of sharks in 2013, is that of all animals on Earth and in the oceans, sharks have the most acutely developed electroreception abilities. The sensory perception enables them to detect and interpret the electric field that is emitted by animals as well as by the earth itself. It is used to hunt prey that may be concealed from vision, and even as a gravitational device and stabilizer. The electroreception ability is enabled by something called the ampullae of Lorenzini. These are modified sensory organs situated in the snout or nose of the shark and can number from a few hundred for the more placid sharks to well over 1,000 for active hunters and killers. The ampullae of Lorenzi are made up of large pore filled with a jelly-like substance. Gelatinous secretions are stored in the cylindrical canals which are attached to these bulbous pores. Minute sensory cells line the walls of each pore. These senses even faint electrical impulses from the environment around the shark and transmits the message to the sensory nerve at the base of each pore. The nerve sends messages directly to the brain to inform the shark of gravitational electro-sensations of those of nearby prey. So acute is the sensory ability that they can detect a change in voltage of 10 millionths of a volt. The ampullae of Lorenzini are also able to detect changes in water pressure and temperature, although this to a far lesser degree. The electroreception ability present in sharks is a significant survival tool, as it allows them to seek out and find prey that is hidden behind rocks or even under sand, just from sensing the natural electrical signals emitted by all animals. The prey is unable to control this emission of impulse, regardless of how motionless it remains. When an animal or person is injured, they emit erratic electrical impulses attracting the shark. Interestingly, this is thought to be the reason that a shark bite victim will continue to be attacked by the shark while their rescuers remain within their immediate vicinity without being bothered by the animal at all. This is also the reason that a shark being offered visible and clear bait alongside a boat will often bite the propeller of the boat or the cage in which the divers are nestled. These items emit a stronger electrical signal than the food or divers themselves. This is also the basis for the belief that although sharks use their senses of sight and smell to track prey, they switch to their sense of electroreception once they are close to the prey in order to make the final attack. The specific adaptations of the shark for its survival in watery hunting grounds are truly impressive. Not only are its senses of sight and smell particularly enhanced for hunting and navigating with minimal visibility, but the ampullae of Lorenzini and its electroreception abilities have ensured that these magnificent animals are able to thrive under some of the most challenging conditions. Wow. So that's just, one of the many features of this magnificent creature. I learned that there are at least 500 different species of sharks. That they range in size. Of course, the great white shark is the most famous one. But generally speaking, a human being is more likely to die in a car crash, or according to this site, having a vending machine fall on them, than being attacked by a shark. Apparently, shark attacks are less than 100 in a year, and not sure what these people were doing when they were attacked by sharks, but I just thought that this was absolutely magnificent, in that apparently 2/3 of a shark's brain are geared to smell. So that means they have a keener sense of smell than a dog. Amazing, truly amazing. So if you want to know some more information about sharks and how they are definitely something that you want to respect and stay clear of in general, there's your information for you. Of course, I always kind of think of sharks as sort of being the garbage men of the sea. They also have a function in keeping the oceans balanced. So that's a little bit about the sharks, but let's talk about jāhnavī. And of flowing rivers, I am the Ganges. So this is a beautiful, very beautiful name for the Ganges River, jāhnavī. The Ganges River is female, and of course, being closely associated to Lord Vishnu, all-pervading. Okay, so the Ganges River is very, very long. It runs through India and through Bangladesh. The river itself is nearly 3,000 kilometers long, and it comes from the Gangotri Glacier of the western Himalayas. Let's see, in the Indian state of Uttarakhand, and flows south and east through the Gangetic Plain of India and Bangladesh, eventually emptying into the Bay of Bengal. So the Ganges is a lifeline to millions who live along its course. It is a sacred river and is worshipped as the goddess Ganga, or Ganga Devi. Okay, so then here in Wiki, it talks about how many imperial capitals such as Prayagraj, Dhaka, Berhampur, Bikrampur, Kampila, Kanaju, Kara, Kashi, Kolkata, Murshidabad, Mangur, Patiputra, and Sonargaon have been located on its banks. So we all know that rivers are very important, and that in general, great metropolises and cities are built along the banks of the river. Now, the Ganges River has a special transcendental history in these transcendental histories that I'm trying to relate to you every Monday. So last week I talked about Prahlad Maharaj, right? Prahlad Maharaj was born in the dynasty of the Daityas. In other words, he was born into the Asuric or the demoniac family line, because remember, Kasyapa Muni, he had two wives, Diti and Aditi. So, DT, I should say, am I getting this right? DT and Aditi. Aditi was giving birth to the these very, very powerful Asuric personalities. Because, of course, Kasyapa Muni was no ordinary person. He was a very, very powerful yogi. And moving along, one of the personalities that was born in this, particular family line was Bali, or Bali Maharaj, right? Of course, we recognize the name Bali as being a country. So all these things have a relationship. So Bali Maharaj, somehow or another, he eventually became a devotee, actually. But somehow or another, he became very charmed by this particular incarnation of Lord Vishnu known as Vamana Dev. And Vamana Dev appeared as a young boy, a young Brahmin boy with blonde hair, very beautiful and very charming. And so the etiquette is that when a Brahmin would go to the palace of a king, Bali Maharaj was a great king, you could not refuse a Brahmin anything, okay? Even among Asuras, this etiquette was known and was followed, So when Vamana Dev appeared there, Bali Maharaj said, what can I do for you? I grant you 3 boons, 3 wishes. And so Vamana said, I want 3 steps of your land. In other words, as far as I can literally step with my feet, that's the land that I want. Bali Maharaj was probably very amused at this, because he said, this Brahmin child is a dwarf. He's teeny, The steps of land that he is going to be obtaining from me is going to be maybe, this big at most. He simply can't step that far. So he said, of course, I grant you that. You may have that. So it's described that in his first step, Vamana Dev covered all the lower planetary systems, which is quite a distance. And in his second step, he covered all the upper planetary systems. And in fact, when he covered all the upper planetary systems, his big toe actually cracked the covering of the universe. And from the covering of the universe, the water that was coming down, that was there from Vajra, actually entered through the universe, right? And landed on Lord Shiva's head. So if you look closely at Lord Shiva, you will see this kind of depiction of water, kind of like a waterfall coming down on his head. So Lord Shiva, as I've mentioned before, helped break the fall of the celestial Ganges reaching the earth. But what's significant about it in terms of bhakti yoga is that the toe of the lotus feet of the Lord actually touched this water. And that's what makes the water sacred, you see, is that its actual association with the lotus feet of the Lord. Why is there always this reference to the lotus feet of the Lord? Because the feet are considered to be, approachable, right? And when you're approaching the spiritual master, for example, a disciple will touch the feet of the spiritual master. Why? Because the karma, all the sinful reactions are absorbed through the feet. The spiritual master is actually taking on that burden when you touch his feet. So, by extension, right, people are going into the Ganges River on a regular basis to worship the Ganges to bathe in the Ganges, essentially to become purified and to get rid of any, karma, right, that they are still carrying around in a particular lifetime. Because the idea is to let all of that go, to become purified enough, to be able to be reinstated in the natural position as an eternal servant of the Lord, as a jiva. That's the idea here. So, for those of you who are curious, for his third step, Vamana said, "You promised me 3 steps of land, but you've only been able to grant me 2. You know it's a great offense, not to fulfill the desires of a Brahmin. Where shall I place my 3rd step?" And at that point, that's when Bali Maharaj realized who was in front of him, and he said, "You may place your 3rd step on my head." Meaning, I offer my obeisances to you, and I am your servant. I realize who you are. I realize, my false ego was out of control. I thought that I was the enjoyer and I was the controller of all of this, but actually it is you. So Prabhupada used to say, that our disease in the material world is that we are taking God's property and we are claiming it as our own, right? We are taking it and we are claiming it as our own. And as such, we are abusing it. So, obviously, the world was created in such a way that we could all have what we need, to be able to live, to be able to eat, to be able to shelter our families, to have a healthy life. But when we get it twisted, we are taking things and claiming things. Like we were driving around yesterday and there were so many signs up on, vacant pieces of property, wilderness areas and so forth. And someone had put their real estate sign there and saying, for sale, available. And I always find myself thinking, how is it that you were able to claim this bit of nature and make it your own? What would it be like if this bit of nature were just able to stand free and continue to be a habitat for the animals, for the bobcats and the birds and all the other creatures that live in this terrain, and not be taken and turned into something else, and this continual encroachment, upon land. I know in Costa Rica, Manuel, Costa Rica is famous, for its rainforest and its jungle and its beautiful diversity of creatures there. So, there you go. That's a little backstory on the Ganges River and its relationship to Kṛṣṇa and why people bathe in the Ganges, why it's important for spiritual life and spiritual advancement. Of course, any river should be seen as the veins of the Lord. So it doesn't mean that, we should be seeing other rivers and other bodies of water as less than. They are all important. But again, the Ganges has a very specific and a very powerful benediction and place, for us here on earth. There's other stories about the Ganges too, but I'm not going to get into that today. It's a little bit can be seen as a little bit esoteric and a little bit off topic. So I'm not going to get into that today, but maybe one day, if you want, I can tell you a story about the Ganges River and her mortal husband and how that went down. Okay. All right. So I'm going to be over on Instagram at about 9:30 to do a live there. I want to show you one thing, though, before I go. So, Manuel, you sit tight. Don't go anywhere. And that is the t-shirts came. The t-shirts came. They came on Friday. And there's two different types of t-shirts. This one is the lyric card, you know, or sugar sweet. And this photo was taken by my dear friend Nick Buskirk. I don't even know where Nick is anymore. But this was shot in Paris. Thank you. And it was shot, you know, just in front of a bathroom door. Set up some lights. Set up, I think, a silver reflective light. And I had this little Betsy Johnson jacket that I was very, very fond of at the time, and we did this, and I've been told that this has got kind of a movie star Lana Del Rey vibe, so apparently I am culturally relevant. So I got my scale in. Today I'm going to be ordering shipping supplies to be able to ship these t-shirts to you. Maybe I should put Costa Rica on the list. It's something that I hadn't actually thought about. And then I will be able to mail these out soon. I'm still waiting for the hot sauce to come. So I want to make sure, you know, that I've got everything available. So everything should be pretty much good to go, you know, within the next 10 days. But let me show you the other one too. Thank you, Manuel. This is the other t-shirt. This is the like fire one. So there I am clutching my pearls. And these are 100% cotton. These are pre-shrunk, just like the other ones, but obviously this is a white t-shirt with a black design. The black seemed to be good to make the other one show up because it's, you know, there's a lot of white in that t-shirt. So yeah, they come in medium, they come in large, they come in extra large, and I guess these are going to be good, you know, for the cooler weather into the spring as well. So that's what's up, and I'm gonna have a promotional coupon code for this. I got to decide how long that's going to be. But for those of my peeps that are here on the regular, I want to offer you a special little discount, you know, for these t-shirts. Yay! So that's my exciting news. I'm very excited. And there you have it. So when the store and, you know, all the little kinks and everything are completely worked out and I am satisfied that you're going to have a fantastic experience with it, I've been working on that just about every day now. Still have to do some things like, you know, I have to get the packages, put the t-shirts in there, weigh them on the scale to make sure, you know, that when it's time to ship them, everything is going to be right in terms of the postage and, you know, you will actually get them. So this has been really, really exciting. Thank you so much, you guys, for your response. It has been fabulous with this whole thing. I'm really excited about it. And more good things coming. I'm also looking into, because Cameron, Arthur Cole, he wanted to know if I was going to have a book available of all these different photos and stuff that I have been showing you with the lyric cards. These are photos from my personal archive from my modeling days in Paris, France, back in the roaring 90s, which is just one of the greatest eras for fashion and modeling ever. Truly, we're still talking about that era now, and it's 2020. So I'm looking into that. I'm looking into where I can actually find a printer that is quality, you know, to reproduce these photos, and so you can have that in one thing. But also, you know, I want to write out the little stories as well, you know, that go along with each photo, so you can have that history too. Yeah, so that's what's up. All right, so thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Manuel. I'm glad that you like them. So I'll let you know when the store is live. You know, everyone who's asked, I will let you know when the store is live. Yeah, and I will provide that link. But in the meantime, if you haven't done so already, my website is posted on the top of this page, and you can go take my song or my cover spin of Like Fire for a ride. It's on Spotify, and you know, I've put the link and everything there for you so you can listen to that. And also on the same page, I put the lyric video so you can sing along. So basically, this is your karaoke sing-along. So go check that out, okay? I do have some music for you. Oh, thank you, Akani. You made my day. Nice to listen to you. Oh, I'm so happy. You made my day too by being here. I've missed you, really. I've been wondering where you were. There's so much going on in the world right now that, you know, I do think about my fans, and I do worry about you guys if I don't hear from you for a while. Okay. Okay. Have a nice day. Yeah, I will. It's nice being here with you guys, with you. Okay, bye now. See you next week.